Malaysia is somewhere that we could move to. My wife and I are going to be touring some properties, checking out a whole bunch of other stuff. Maybe it's better in Malaysia to just rent, but I think it's a beautiful city. I think it's very modern. It offers a lot of positives and certainly very international. But again, the further outside the city you go beyond that, in most areas you might have a little bit of trouble or a little bit of culture shock. Hey everybody, welcome to KLCC, Kuala Lumpur Central City. I'm here right by the Petronas Twin Towers. Come check out KLCC with me and stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment down below. Let me know if you've ever been here. My wife and I are going to be touring some properties, checking out a whole bunch of other stuff, and seeing if we think Malaysia is somewhere that we could move to. So stay tuned. I think we got a really awesome episode for you, and we'll catch you at the end. I just wanted to take the time to go over some of the highlights now that we've been here for about 3 full days. We've toured 4 properties. The first one was our least favorite of the bunch. It was currently unoccupied, so we weren't too happy with it. The asking price was about 1.1 million ringgits. Your rental price, which was also available, was about 4,500 ringgits per month. It didn't show well because there were some cockroaches that were dead on the floor, and I think because it was unused, it certainly didn't show as well as some other properties. And while clean, it still seemed dirty. Seemed a little bit older. 2008 construction in Malaysia is very different compared to 2008 construction in most other places. So definitely something to keep in mind. We preferred the other 3 that we saw, which were much more newer and modern. I think the next oldest one was built in like 2018 or 2020, something like that. So the next one we went to was called Rumah, which is attached to a 5-star hotel, which is awesome. So the hotel side has amenities and the residence side has amenities as well. And that one, there was currently a tenant in there who was kind enough to show us their property. So we were unable to take photos and videos inside of that property just out of respect for the homeowner. They had young children there. I didn't feel comfortable doing that, but definitely it felt the most like home. Gorgeous, gorgeous views of the Twin Towers from the pool area and the amenity deck. It's definitely the top on our list. So interestingly enough, the rent price in pretty much all 4 of the places that we looked at were almost exactly the same, between 4,500 and 7,000 ringgits. However, the purchase prices to buy the properties ranged about 35 to 40% from the cheapest to the most expensive, which is a little concerning to me, because if you look at it as an investment, then you may pay 40% more, but still only be able to rent it for the same amount of money. So I definitely think that's something to take into consideration. Maybe it's better in Malaysia to just rent, especially if you're only thinking about this as a short-term commitment. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But I guess the benefit is, if you see this area as a place where you think it's going to go up in value over time, then it would still make more sense to buy, because in 5 years or so, you'll be able to basically get all of your money back if you decide to sell it. Now, one thing that the realtors were kind enough to tell us was that you have to hold your property for 5 years. They don't recommend holding it for a long time, but minimum 5 years, because otherwise, basically, it's the difference between short and long-term capital gains tax. So the profit will be taxed 30% under 5 years and 10% for over 5 years. So a huge savings there. So building 3 and 4, even though they were very nice, they were modern, the location was fabulous on all 4 of them, actually, right next to transits or hospitals or schools. Everything was walking distance to a train station. You have a grocery store right nearby, attached to a shopping mall. We had so many of those. Building 3 and 4, though, Felt a little cold. One thing that I don't like about new construction, and I think this goes for anywhere in the world, they all kind of look the same. Everything's very flat, it's white, it's gray. You know, you don't really have any personality or personalization. You don't really see any unique architecture, like somebody built the house themselves. For instance, when we go to Japan, it's very popular that when a new generation takes over a property, they use the construction company to build the entire house from scratch. And you'll see that there's a little bit more personalization attached to it. In America, that's almost impossible because it would be too expensive. Usually you're buying houses that are 60 to 80 years old in America, but you know, you'll have 3 or 4 different floor plans, you'll redo the siding, you know, something like that. Looks a little too much like the 1 minute city where everything kind of looks the same, it looks modern, so it's just one thing that I noticed. So I think our biggest takeaways, the pluses, you have access to amazing international schools, which is fantastic because we have a young daughter who will need to go to a school eventually. So that's a huge, huge benefit for us. I think the convenience factor is amazing. It's like being in the heart of New York City. Great public transportation, but way cleaner. Obviously safer, like I said. And that alone is something that makes it valuable. Aside from the cost of living, which is drastically cheaper, obviously to find a 1,200 square foot or 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 2-bath apartment in the middle of like Times Square probably is going to be upwards of over $5,000 a month, maybe more. Whereas here, converted to US dollars, you're looking at about $1,100, maybe $1,400 or $1,500 if it's fully furnished. So the cost savings alone, astronomically different. If you go to a cafe, you're looking at $5 to $10, so I don't think it's that much cheaper, especially if it's like a modern chain. But if you use the subway system, drastically cheaper. For my wife and I, it might be like 3 ringgits, which is less than, I think it's less than $1. Quick math on the ringgits is divide it by 4, and that'll give you the rough US dollar range, but it's actually a little cheaper than that. So easy math, if it's $4, just assume that it's $1 US, but you'll actually still end up saving a few cents on top of it. One last huge upside, at least if English is your first language, this country speaks English almost everywhere. So they're ranked like number 3, I think, of all Southeast Asian countries for English proficiency. Everywhere I go, people speak English, so that hasn't been a problem at all. I don't know if that's your primary language, but for me, that certainly helps because in Japan, it's a lot harder to get around speaking English. I pretty much live on Google Translate, so that's definitely a huge plus. Now, the minuses. I think it depends on where your business is. So for me, running both of my businesses that I currently have in America, the time zones are a little different based on where daylight savings is right now, which is January of 2025. We are 13 hours different from the United States, so it's a little difficult for me to schedule conference calls if I have to. I'm pretty much stuck with just the late evening or really early morning, which is a little difficult. So if you run a business overseas, then I think it's going to be a little challenging for you to be able to continue managing it, but it's definitely possible. If you're living the digital nomad lifestyle, the internet here is pretty good, and I think that you won't have an issue at all. One of the other downsides that I've noticed, because we traveled a little bit outside of the city to go see a tourist attraction called Batu Caves, when you go a little further outside of the main city, you will start to see the third world aspect of the country. So when you're in the central city, everything is modern, gorgeous, check it out, tall buildings, everything you could ever imagine, everything you want is all in one place, and it's perfect. The shopping malls, luxury, Louis Vuitton, Prada, Chanel, Dolce, anything that you could think of, anything that you could want, they have right here in the central city. Transportation's clean, it's very safe, but as soon as you go 30, 45 minutes, an hour outside of the central city, then you start to see a little bit of the huts, the squatty potties, mold, the dirt, not so great. So it is something that as you travel around the world, the one benefit that America has over many other countries is the suburban infrastructure and development. Wherever you go in America, Home Depot's 20 minutes away, Target's 20 minutes away, same shopping centers, same construction quality, similar conveniences, although you may not have public transportation. So definitely a huge disadvantage here is you are kind of stuck in one of the big cities, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if you like being in the big city. I don't think you're really going to find suburban life, but our realtors were kind enough to take us to another area called Desa Park City, which is incredible, especially for families. And that seemed like almost a suburban city for families. And that area, my wife and I both thought was great. Again, with most things modern, it kind of has that feel where everything looks the same a little bit, but definitely dog-friendly, beautiful park, all sorts of really nice stuff. So that's definitely an area that I would highly recommend checking out, especially if you have a young family. So there are aspects that are like a suburban area outside of a city that still have some development. But again, the further outside the city you go beyond that, in most areas you might have a little bit of trouble or a little bit of culture shock. Another thing that I really am struggling with to get used to here is the weather. So, being a little excess in life, even though I'm on the decline, losing a few pounds, I have to say right now, filming this video, I am sweating my frickin' balls off. And that's something that I definitely have to get used to. We also have a near 100-pound Akita, Japanese Akita dog, double undercoat, fluffy as hell. We did see a couple huskies, so if they could survive, I'm sure my dog can too, but definitely something to keep in mind that it's going to be a little challenging for the sushi monster to get used to this, much like her dad. So remember, if you are planning on coming here as a foreigner and purchasing a property, your minimum requirement is going to be 1 million ringgits. So that's about 250,000 US dollars. You're able to rent here, that's no problem. You're looking at about 1,100 to 1,500 US dollars. Definitely for the price, I think it might be one of the best places in the world. English speaking, healthcare is fantastic, incredibly safe country. The worst area we've been to, you have to watch out for pickpockets, which is no issue at all. You have those everywhere, so just be vigilant. But in the main areas like KLCC, the pavilion, all of that stuff, you have no issues with any safety whatsoever, not even pickpockets. So in terms of purchasing, I think if you plan on staying here for 5 years, you're better off purchasing. If you're planning on staying here for 1 year, then you're probably better off renting. What do you think? Leave a comment down below and let me know. But I think it's a beautiful city. I think it's very modern. It offers a lot of positives and certainly very international. You'll see people of all walks of life here, and you'll be able to make a lot of friends, I think, and see what another slice of life looks like. Certainly seems like it gives America a run for its money. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe, check it out, because our next trip is going to be over to Sapporo, Japan. We're going to look at some properties there and see what or why we like about that country. So stay tuned, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace, everybody.